Ian, going back to Wata here, this is a story off of SNES Central that was alerted to me from Evan Gowan, who does a lot of great preservation work on the Super Nintendo side, helping to get prototypes dumped. He writes a lot about it. He wrote a certain section for a certain Super Nintendo guidebook on unreleased Super Nintendo games. He's a good dude. And he talked about, in this article on SNEScentral.com, about grading video game prototypes. And that's something that I never liked slabbing these prototypes to begin with.
Right.
I always thought that was weird to do that. They're not necessarily graded, but they're slabbed and authenticated, I'll just say, when they put them in here. In this article, talks about this game called Spectre, a prototype for Spectre. A Super Nintendo game demo from 93, 94 by Synergistic Software. I'm going to go to the eBay auction now. He said, Wata Games promises to grade and authenticate any and all kinds of video games. It is sort of the successor of the Video Game Authority, but arguably with a much better connection to the video game collecting scene. I won't go here into whether or not grading is good for game collecting, but I wanted to discuss the grading of prototypes. I keep close track of any SNES prototype auctions and sales, and a few Wata graded prototypes have started popping up in my searches. There was one that caught my eye, a graded prototype of Spectre. He then shows the Spectre picture. On the back, there's a rectangular hole cut out to expose the board, the ROM board. He straight up says, this prototype is not a real prototype. The PCB peeking out is clearly a retail board, and the chips are exactly the same as the PCB documented on this site. Obviously, the card at one point hosted a prototype board, but now it is just a retail game in it.
Those holes are cut there so you have access to the prototype board, and basically they slot in the ROMs.
They slot in the chips.
They burn, the most recent image to them.
To me, this seemed weird, he says. As mentioned above, this caught my eye, and I was certain I had seen this particular prototype before. Good on Evan, keeping track of this. Encyclopedia of Super Nintendo prototypes. Luckily, I've been saving every single SNES prototype that I see on sale on eBay, an archive that stretches back nearly 10 years. Jeez. I went back, video game preservation, in a forum. I went back and found an auction for this cart from 2019. The auction was for 3 games and sold for about $700. I would assume that the person who got this graded won that auction. Here are some close-up pictures, and it shows the picture. It's the same game, same label, without it before it was slabbed. Here, as seen, this is the exact same prototype. However, I was certain that I had seen it before that. It turned out to be very true. In 2012, noted prototype collector Dream TR sold a bunch of empty. He sold a bunch of empty cart shells. I've saved the images from that auction. He then shows the auction of the same Spectre Super Nintendo quote-unquote prototype cart without a board inside of it.
Yep.
Uh-oh. The picture is a bit small, but it's clearly the same cart shell. The seller of the graded Spectre also had the Mirror Wars cart up for auction briefly before taken down. So it is not just a second copy that looks similar. So there are several problems here. The PCB is clearly of the retail game and not a prototype. The hole in the cart shell clearly indicates that the PCB was not what was originally in the cart shell, and it once held a prototype board. The PCB was put into the cart shell sometime after Dream TR's sale in 2012. All these facts really goes to show that Wata has not done their homework on these prototypes. And he then goes into further about the problems with this lack of authentication. Here, this is horrible.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. That's a real embarrassing thing, to be the grading authority and then to get in and pass through a prototype that is, for all intents and purposes, fake.
This is I've evidence comments to say that was fake. I mean, and Wata responded. Wata Games responded on February 7th. They've contacted me and acknowledged their error in authenticating the Spectre and Mirror Wars cart. So it's now more than one, because there was 3 that sold in the auction. So whoever got these 3 cart shells might have, I don't know the whole history of what happened to these cart shells, but at some point, these held prototype boards. Someone then said, you know what? I'm going to fake a prototype by getting a commercial board and throwing it in there and then pawning it off to someone who doesn't know better. Which is fine, but then the authenticator has to then open up and say that, hey, this is a commercial board. Uh-oh.
Right.
This isn't a real prototype. And this is the issue I got with people back in the Nintendo age back in the day. People would throw the words out like prototype when sometimes it was just a sample or even a demo cart, and sometimes those were commercial boards that were put in, sent out for review copies too.
Right.
They're not always prototype boards. Just because it doesn't look like a regular cartridge, it doesn't look like the commercial release, doesn't necessarily mean the board inside is a prototype board. And that's fine if you're talking about buying and selling a sample game, but when you're authenticating it, you got to open up the shell and look at the board.
Yeah.
And it sounds like something happened in this process where that something got dropped here.
This one, you wouldn't have had to even open it, and you would have just looked at the back and gone, that's retail.
Well, someone like Evan, the Hawkeye that he is, saw that. But the person, the problem is that now this gets auctioned, if someone doesn't have the knowledge to know that, they get it, and now they're finding out after the fact through Evan on SNEScentral.com. You know, like this is horrifying that this could happen.
So, yeah.
And this isn't to totally slam Wata for dropping the ball here, but this is why, to me, it's always dangerous to get into this game of buying and selling, collecting prototypes to begin with, and paying exorbitant amounts, because a lot of people doing this don't have the knowledge to know what the hell they're getting into.
Yeah,
as well.
some stuff like the grading, whether you agree with grading or not, I think it's just apparent with some of the stuff, grading doesn't make sense, and yeah, I don't know, very odd. I mean, unless you just want to put it in a protective case.
And this, but you can buy on your own.
Sure.
You know, I've done it. The VGA cases were great for the NWCs. So the good news is that they're going to reach out to Evan for future, authentication of prototypes, which is great to do that. Hopefully you get the guy a nice, healthy stipend. Evan says, I still think it is a difficult thing to authenticate most prototypes because their history will not be known. For the SNES, it might be better than a lot of systems since I have kept close track of sales during the past 10 years. Right. Evan's the man here. Evan's the man. I am not aware of anyone tracking prototypes for other systems. For items with a known history, authentication could provide benefits of ensuring that legitimate prototypes are kept track of. All right, so some devious buyer made some money with at least two of that we know. I don't know about the third one. What was the third one? Mirror Wars and Thunderhawk, by throwing in retail boards into these shells. It's horrifying. To me, it's very dangerous to overvalue, even if they're one-of-a-kind prototypes. Be very careful. Be very careful. It's a dangerous ground here. Again, not a lot of people. I mean, not a lot of people know about this stuff. It's tough to know about prototype boards and what to look for. I don't know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't know where to start. All right. Anything else to add? It's just a strange thing, and we know mistakes like this happen. They happen with VGA. I heard stories of VGA. Saying something was sealed when it really was resealed. I've heard stories about that.
Sure.
So these things can happen.
Well, this is part of the growing pains, I think, of the grading as well. I mean, these things are likely to happen. There's likely to be a whole lot more first embarrassments that hopefully will not happen again. The
other issue, though, is this, and we're probably going to try to see this. There will be people that try to now fake factory seals on games. That we will this will be attempted. If yes, people try to fake them before, but they're always obvious. You will get people put money into try to doing a good one because now they see the money that's in the system that they can do it.
Right.
It's not worth it to spend maybe $10,000 to try to fake a seal when a seal game's worth $1,000. But if it's worth $100,000, Ian, I might try to do it.
Yeah.
And it's always about the scale of that. It's worth my money to get it. In and out, input versus output of your investment. You're going to see this happen more and more, because again, this is millionaire money now coming into this sector of the hobby. It's not a new hobby. This specter. It's a specter we now see in the hobby.
Jesus H.
Check out SNEScentral.com. Evan runs a good site. Lots of great information there. Prototypes, peripherals. There's some scans there. Chip archive. You can get some Doritos there. Get some of Ian's barbecue wrap snack chips.
Little Romeo barbecue with my honey. Sorry, they're just Romeo now. It's just Romeo Miller.
No, he's not little anymore.
He's not little anymore.
Okay.